How's it going, everybody? Welcome back to Manatee Gaming. Thank you so much for checking out the second video in this series. So once again with this series, I'm going to be trying to teach you guys as much as I possibly can about flipping. I want to be able to take people from I have no idea what to do to I can really flip now at the very end. Anyway, that's kind of the goal. So in this episode, we're going to be showing you a bunch of different things. I don't know why I say episode, but in this video, we're going to be showing you a bunch of different things that you can do and kind of building on to the same knowledge we were starting to build in the first one. Also, too, I'm sure people are going to ask, no, this is not how my screen normally looks. I have adjusted the resolution and everything to make it easier for you guys to see, and also have moved around stuff just for the video. This is not normally what my screen looks like. So anyway, I'm going to go ahead and run on in here. And you'll notice that I am at the Menaphos Grand Exchange section, and I will explain to you why I'm at the Menaphos Grand Exchange section. Actually, I'm going to go ahead and explain that first because we're talking about it anyway. So when you are doing flipping, you're going to notice that there is quite a bit of time in between when your stuff will buy, when you put your offers in, when stuff's going to sell, stuff like that. You have some time in between. And one of the things I highly recommend not doing is just bank standing and staring at the Grand Exchange. That is not really going to be the greatest idea as far as like getting a good use of time or like, spending your time wisely. You can still make a lot of progress on your account while you're doing flipping. An alternative also is instead of flipping on your main, you can also have an alt account that is only for flipping. I will actually explain more stuff about alts in a future video in this series. But for right now, I would just recommend you're always doing something, because if you're just sitting here staring at the Grand Exchange, number one, you're probably going to become less patient and probably like immaturely pull out offers and just panic sell things and stuff like that. So it's a really good idea not to just stare at the Grand Exchange in general. So if we're looking right here in my bank, I actually will pull out something that you can use. Actually, I don't know if I have any of them left. I don't. They're all gone. So there's an item called a bank standard that you can make with invention. And what a bank standard will do is while you're standing near a bank, so for example right here, it will explode and give you a bunch of invention components. So you can definitely make those and use those while you're sitting here at the Grand Exchange. Another alternative too is just doing something else that is a bank standing activity. If you can do fletching, you can do crafting, you can do train your magic with like spells like high alchemy and stuff. You can do all kinds of stuff while you're doing bank standing. And I'll actually give you guys a really great example of something you can do as well. But I kind of want to explain why I'm at Menaphos. So I'm at Menaphos because while you're at Menaphos and you're doing random things, you will randomly get rep drops. So I have not completed my 100% rep like tier 10 and everything for this, so sometimes I will hang out at Menaphos Bank just because of the fact that whenever you do something here, you will get random drops of your rep for Menaphos. So if I'm sitting here disassembling these barberry seeds, then there it is right there. You see how I just got 31.2 for the merchant district? So that is just literally, it'll just give you that when you're just doing random things. So if you're going to be doing a bunch of bank standing activities while you're doing flipping, I highly recommend doing it here, especially if you do not have this already maxed. If you already have this all maxed, it doesn't really matter, but if you're one of those people like most players that do not have that done, then it's gonna be a really good idea to hang out here. Something else too is that if you are to do this cool little trick I'm going to show you, if you would have a fire staff or something like that that gives you fire runes equipped, or just have, basically just have the ability to cast high alchemy. If you can cast high alchemy, then what you can do is you can actually do disassembling and high alchemy pretty much at the same time. There's not really a lag in the animation there. So if I am key binding these, so I'm going to go ahead and put my key bind high alchemy at 1, I'm going to put my disassembling at 2, and that way I can quickly do this. But if I go like this right here, I'm going to high alch this and then quickly disassemble. You see right there, I don't have to wait for the animation for high alching. I can actually just do that right there and pretty much not even miss a beat. It is actually faster to do this. As you can see, you disassemble pretty much every 2 ticks. You do this in like basically 1 tick. So if you were to do high alchemy and then right in disassembling, it's 1 tick. See how that right there? So you can actually do disassembling and high alchemy pretty much at the same time. And actually, if you think about it, since it's 2 ticks in between the invention stuff, the disassembling, and then 1 tick if you do high alchemy, it actually doesn't waste any time at all for invention, and you can disassemble the same amount of items per hour even if you are high alching while doing it. So that's probably something cool that you guys may not have known. It's a really great way for you to be able to get a little bit of extra money. Like I can go ahead and click that, and I disassemble that, or sorry, high alch this. So I can high alch my salvage right here and get a bunch of XP. This is something you can just do while you're bank standing. If you're trying to figure out what would I disassemble for, then just disassemble things that'll be useful for you to make your perks and gear and everything later on. But anyway, guys, that's just something small and cool you can do while you're standing here. But let's go ahead and jump into the actual stuff so I can teach you guys more about flipping. So looking at the Grand Exchange here, now we're going to go over a little bit more of an explanation about volume. So in the previous video, I discussed some things about volume, such as when things take longer to buy, longer to sell, when they have sometimes a larger range and everything can be a lot based on volume. You might be wondering, how can I figure out if an item is low volume without really knowing, just like, just already knowing about that item. And so I'll show you guys a really quick way of how you can actually figure that out. So if we look back over here, we're on, this is the flip club key. Let's go right over here to Magic Shield Bow. So this Magic Shield Bow graph right here is showing the 1 year graph for Magic Shield Bow. So basically this is, you can find this in the RuneScape wiki. So the link is right here, the RuneScape wiki runescape.wiki/w/Magic Shield Bow. That will show you this right here. But essentially, if you just go on the RuneScape wiki and you type in any item, then it'll pop up with the graph for that item. That way you can be able to look and see what the price trends are for things and, kind of get an idea of how an item acts. If you see right here how this goes up and down, very jagged and very often. It quite often is going up and down. That is usually something that usually tends to be something that has a little bit of a higher volume. If you bring it, so we're currently on the 1 year. If we bring it down to like the 6 months, you can see it's still very jagged, quite, frequently changing. If you go to 3 months, it's still frequently changing. Like it still goes up and down, up and down, up and down. That right there is a sign of typically a pretty high volume item. It's something that's traded very often because what this right here represents is the actual Grand Exchange price itself. And the Grand Exchange price changes only when there are a certain number of updates. If you look in the Grand Exchange, there are items that are still not at what their accurate price is. The party hats took forever to be able to be actually at an actual max cash. They kept on being a few GP below max cash and stuff like that. That's because there was hardly any of them traded in there. And if they're not that many traded, it just won't update. So this right here is showing that this is updating very quickly. Now let me show you something else that, so once again, this is like a high volume example. Let me show you something that is more of a low volume example, and you'll see right away the difference. Right there, boom, we go to Easter egg. As you can see with Easter egg, it goes quite a while with no change. Notice how there's just no change. Doesn't change. And that is because there are far less Easter eggs traded in the game than there are of another item such as a Magic Shield Bow. So an Easter egg would be an example of a very low volume item. And this is actually on the 1 year graph, believe it or not. If you go to 6 months, it's like ridiculous. Like the price has changed a noticeable amount. It's changed what? Once, twice. It's changed twice, 2 or 3 times in a 6 month period. So that gives you a little bit of an idea of just how low volume an item like an Easter egg is compared to how many times this thing changes in 3 months. How many times this thing changes in a month. Also, by the way, the red number, the red line here is the 30-day average, which will come into play in a future video that I'm going to discuss. But the blue line is actually what the Grand Exchange shows. So anyway, that right there is one way to be able to find out if an item has high or low volume. The only thing is though is deciding between an item that is like a lower volume, but still has a decent amount of them being traded, such as like a neck armor piece, like Torva Plate Body or something like that. Torva Plate Body is a little bit more of a lower volume item. There's less of them traded, but it will still probably look like there's quite a few of them traded on the Grand Exchange. Not so much like the Magic Shield Bow, but you'll kind of figure out as you go. And kind of like how that goes, like what is high volume, what is low volume. Typically, armor that is tier 70 and above, most all of that is going to be lower volume, like not quite low volume, but lower volume. And so, you can kind of like base upon kind of like how we were talking about previously with the wait times and update amounts, which I'll go ahead and jump on into that now. We're just going to roll that into this because that'll be a great time to explain that. If we go back here to this spreadsheet, once again, this is the Billionaire Flip Club item key. And this is like a small, obviously we have several items on here that are marked, but this I'm going to show you guys the tier 90s part right here. If we're looking at something like a Nox Scythe. So a Nox Scythe is something that is a little bit higher volume trade than something like a Seismic Singularity. The Nox weapons are also traded more often than something like a offhand Drygor Longsword. So what does that mean? What does that really matter to you? Well, it matters a couple different things. Number one, the Seismic Singularity will typically have a larger margin than a Noxious Scythe will or Longbow or Staff. And The lower volume items, the items that are traded a little bit less than the Grand Exchange, do tend to have a little bit better margins than the items that are traded more frequently. And that's not always the case, but in general, that's kind of how it goes. Think about a U-log, for example. A U-log will have hardly a margin at all. Sometimes it's just a couple GP. But then if we look at an item like a agility potion 4-dose, then it probably has a gigantic margin because no one really trades those. So it's not really so much like, it's just, I guess what I'm trying to say is the volume has a huge impact on how much you can stretch the price. That's kind of what it is. It also has a huge amount of impact on the wait times, and that is what we're going to discuss now. So if you look right here at Nox Scythe has a suggested wait time to update of 45 to 60 minutes. What this means is after you put in your offer for a Noxious Scythe, then by the time 45 to 60 minutes has rolled around, you should have updated your price. So that means update your price around 45 to 60 minutes. If you think it's going to update, if you think it's going to move quicker than that or whatever, you can just do it how you want to. This is kind of like the average update time. But doing what we're talking about here, going back to what we're talking about here, 45 to 60 minutes on a Noxious Scythe, which is a higher volume than a Seismic Singularity. Seismic Singularity, 60 to 90 minutes. So it needs a longer wait time because of the fact that it is traded less in the Grand Exchange. Sure, there'll be times where your Seismic Singularity will sell within 5 minutes and sell within 10 minutes. There'll also be times where it might not sell for 2 hours. So it's just like the volume does not mean that it's always going to take longer or always going to, be like that. It just kind of like means it's going to be more often like that. So looking into some of these other items too, we go to Treasure Trails. Sack of Effigies. This is a great example. These things are not traded that often. So Sack of Effigies is a 2 to 3 hour average wait time to update. And it's a little cheaper price item. So we go by this amount to update by. The amount to update by, we kind of discussed that in the last one. That really is just based on the overall price of the item. And that's really what that's based on. So that's really it about wait times and the amount to update by. The thing about wait times though is that you guys should really remember that being patient while you're flipping is extremely important, extremely important. Probably one of the most accurate things that I can tell you is that when you're flipping, it's not about how fast can I flip this item. It's more about how much can I make when I flip this item. If you have that mindset over how fast can I flip this item, you're going to be much more successful because overall, you're trying to make as much money as possible. If you're cutting down your own margin because you're not being patient, that's not going to help anything at all. And understanding the volume of an item can also help you to understand how long you should be waiting and how patient you should be. But those wait times, the amount to wait to update are very important though, because if you're flipping something like a Noxious Scythe, you don't really want to wait 3 hours to update that price because it's not really recommended for you to wait that long. And that is based on the average amount of time it takes for those to be flipped. So keep that in mind that you want to be patient, but you don't really want to be just irresponsibly patient, if that makes any sense. Okay, let me see. So I got a little check mark thing of here of what we're all going to cover. I'm going to cover one last thing here in this video, and I'm actually going to bop on back onto this spreadsheet. So the spreadsheet is meant to be very useful for people to keep referring back to. That's the reason why you'll always see these little people using it up here. This is actually one of the more less frequent use times. I think yesterday we had 12 people on here, but anyway, looking right on here, we have this thing called a stretch. So a stretch means a couple different things depending on where you're seeing it. In our Discord, what it means is when someone posts, for example, Noxious Longbow, 130 million to 131 million, because in our Discord, we'll post exact prices for you to buy and sell items at. It makes it very easy for you, etc., etc. Whenever the price changes, people will post an update being like, hey, this now sells for 100K more, so boost your guys' sell price up. That's the kind of stuff we talk about in the Discord. But what stretch means for us in the Discord is that if someone posts something like Noxbow 130 to 131 million and then stretch sale, that means that it probably sold very fast, or the person just thinks that you can probably sell it for more, so you should try stretching that margin. And what our stretch column here means is simply how much do these items on an average day stretch for? How much more can I try to stretch that? So if I have Nox Longbow and he just said 130 to 131 million. That's a 1 mil margin stretch. So you could try stretching up to selling it for 131.5. It might sell, who knows? But the thing is, though, is you want to put your sell offer in for that and then slowly work it down based on the amount of time to update and also the amount to update by. Now, what stretch can mean is for someone who's not using our Discord is that this is kind of like something that you can remember as if this right here is our average margins, this column right here is the average daily margins that we get on something. Then when you're stretching and trying to go for a fatter margin, this is a pretty good idea of how much you should stretch by. Now, obviously, everyone's going to have their own amounts that they think that they should be stretching these items by, and these will not be something that everyone's like, oh my god, those are perfect. I'm sure people are sitting there like, oh no, I stretch my Dragors for 3 million every time. I'm not saying you can't. I'm just saying this is going to be closer to the average for that. It's going to be something within this range on the average. Well, all right, guys, thank you so much for checking out this video. I would love to ramble on about some more things in this video, but I would like to go ahead and cut it now. That way it's a little bit shorter than the last one. And in the next video, I'll be able to pack in a whole bunch more information. Feel free to join our Discord down below and chat with us. Hit that subscribe button if you haven't already, and I'll see you guys in the next video. Have a good one.